Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter and I am a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. Once a week on Thursday at noon, I hop on Zoom and do a sort of informal show and tell with manuscripts from our collection. So if you haven't been here before, you're very welcome. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat as I go. My colleague Amy Hutchins is here. She's our cataloging librarian and she knows the manuscripts very well. So she'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll keep my eye on the chat. And of course, if you've been here before, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to see people coming back. So our manuscript today is LJS 42. And it is a 15th century Hebrew manuscript that is a couple of works on astronomy. And I misspoke or miswrote when I think when I made the postings. It's not translations, it's actually commentaries on translations. So there are two texts that are in the book. One is a commentary on Solomon ben Abraham Avignor's Hebrew translation of Joannes de Sacro Bosco's Sphaera Mundi, followed by a commentary on a Hebrew translation of Georg von Peurbach's Theoricae novae planetarum. And those two texts are incredibly important for astronomy in the Middle Ages and going into the sort of early modern period. They were written in Latin and then translated into different languages, into Hebrew, into Arabic, into other vernacular languages too. So they were really popular and there were commentaries on them. So the person who wrote the commentaries is Moses ben Baruch Almosnino. And I looked him up, and he was born in Provence in 1384. He was a Hebrew translator, physician, and mystic. And so the texts were written in 1380. Wait a minute, no, I'm getting my people confused. Moses ben Baruch Alamontino, he was 16th century. I apologize. He lived circa 1515 to 1580, and he was a rabbi born in Thessaloniki in about 1515. He died in Constantinople about 1580. So this manuscript is dated to 1551, so kind of right in the middle of his life, although he didn't write the book. It was copied by a scribe who put their name in there, so we know who they are. So it's a little bit complicated. Solomon Avigdor was the person who made the translation of Joannes de Sacro Bosco's Sphaera Mundi. So this person in the 14th century did the translation into Hebrew, and then Almonsino did a commentary and possibly a translation of Georg von Peurbach, and he also did the commentary. So let's go ahead and take a look. The first thing you'll see is some things that are not 15th century. So this book has lived a little bit. The binding, this is interesting to me. The binding itself is possibly 16th century. So the binding is possibly close to the time when the book was written down. But there are these French 19th century documents that have been pasted in the front and the back. So there's the front and then in the back as well. I don't think they have anything to do with the contents. I think it's decorative for some reason. If you have thoughts on why that might be, I would love to hear them. You can also see here in the back that there are notes. It looks like somebody was doing sums here, and there are notes. I think this is Arabic, and there's also in the front when we get in. Also, someone did some decoration, little decorative frame. Maybe they're going to put an illustration in there that never got put in. And after here. Ooh, this looks like, oh no, it was just cut. So there's some scribbles. And one thing that I noticed as I was paging through, so this paper that comes at the beginning and end is different from the paper um, that's here, and it has a watermark. And I'm going to see if I can show you the watermark just because I think it's kind of pretty. You can see that it's like a moon inside a frame. And then the other, let's see, there's the moon inside the frame. And when we get to the other side of the paper, we'll see it looks like an A and a G. It happens to be upside down here. So the record doesn't say anything about watermarks, and I am not an expert, but that could be a way. Identifying the watermark could be a way of identifying where this paper came from. This paper is different. There's no watermark, and it has different sort of lines in it. So here we start let me make sure I get this right. I think we start with the Sacro Bosco, the commentary on Sacro Bosco. And it sort of starts quietly, which makes me think that there might even be something missing from before this, because you would usually expect a kind of header of some kind, and there's nothing there. One of the neat things about this manuscript is it does have tables and also illustrations. You can see the little pieces of paper down at the bottom here. Those are marking the illustrated, or I should say the colored, larger colored diagrams. But here, this is what most of the diagrams look like. They're quite small. And in Penn, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see. And this is what it mostly looks like. So we have sort of slightly larger letters that are sort of, I think, headings, and then small, and then sections that come underneath. It could also be that this is oftentimes in commentary manuscripts, what you have is sections of the text that's being commented on that's sort of set apart, and then the commentary is around it. And oftentimes when that happens, the script will be different. Usually the text that's being commented on will be larger, and the commentary text will be smaller. This is the same. This looks the same to me, but it also feels like maybe this is a section, because if we look at the top of the next line, it sort of continues there. So that could be what's going on here. It doesn't help that I don't read Hebrew. So I think if you could read the Hebrew, you would be better placed to sort of say what that is. So Sacro Bosco's text, Sphaera Mundi, is all about the spheres. So it's about the Earth. That is this medieval concept of the Earth was in the middle, and then outside of Earth is sort of surrounded by these spheres, and in the spheres, there's the moon has a sphere, and the different planets have their own spheres, and the sun has a sphere, and how the spheres move around each other. And that's how the planets move, is that the sphere is actually moving and taking the planets with them. So here is a sphere with the moon inside it. And so this is what we're seeing in these diagrams, is primarily sort of, tracing how the sphere is influencing. It looks like this is, I think, it's showing the curvature of the Earth. That's what I think is happening here. So here's a ship on the ocean. And if you go, you measure from the bottom of the ship, and it goes through the Earth, but at the top you can go down. And so if anyone tells you that people at this time thought the Earth was flat, you can say, no, they didn't, because you see diagrams like this in a lot of places. So we will keep moving through. Actually, I'll skip ahead to here we have some numbers. I don't know what these numbers are doing, but it's always interesting to be looking through something I can't read and then seeing something that I kind of recognize. So we have these um, some math there. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead to 31 first. So I don't want to skip too hard because it is neat. Okay, so I mentioned that the person who wrote the manuscript, that is the scribe. So not the person who wrote the text, but the person who wrote the manuscript is identified in the record as Chaim Luzio. And when we get to the relevant pages, we'll see it looks like there are what we call colophons. This is where a scribe will sign a manuscript and say, this is me, I finished it on this date. They're not always signed with a name, but it looks like this is signed with a name. And so it's believed that according to the record, it's all the same person who wrote it. But I don't know, because right here, this looks different. And maybe it's not a different scribe. Maybe it's the same scribe and he just decided to start writing larger. But I hope you all can see what I'm talking about. The I'm not a paleographer, I'm not a Hebrew paleographer, but this is a lot smaller. This writing is a lot smaller than this, and the letter forms look a little different. There's a slant, I think, in this page that isn't on this page. And this hand continues until the end of Sacro Bosco. So we're still in the middle of the Sacro Bosco commentary on Sacro Bosco. And this is actually a pretty substantial part of it. And it's in this part where we get our first diagram that's been colored in. And clearly this was planned, right? The text has been written around this shape. Whether it was planned for this to be colored in or not, it's really hard to tell. And there's no indication in the record of when the coloring was done, if it was done at the time the book was made, or if we think it was added later. That would actually be something interesting to look into. But this is also the first really large diagram, I think, that we've seen. I think they've mostly been small, but here's the sort of larger one, and it's been colored in with different shades of paint. Here on this side, we're still seeing the same sort of format with the sort of heading and then the text being divided. And even on the next page, it's a full 2 columns. So I think it may be that text is being continued down, and then we have perhaps the commentary being written here. So that is, I think what's happening here. So even though I can't read this, the formatting is helping me understand what's going on. So Robbie Thauer is asking, is Hebrew written left to right or right to left? It is right to left. So that's why I opened it from that side. And so this is where the text begins and then comes up here. All right. And we have more small diagrams. Oh, yeah, thank you, Amy. So Brianna asked, do you know what pigments were used? And we don't know what pigments were used. We would have to do some kind of chemical testing to find out, and we haven't done that. So this is interesting. So here's a spot where the scribe left space for a diagram to be added later, and it was not added later. So this is a thing you see sometimes. You see that happen also in illuminated manuscripts, fancy manuscripts, where there's been space left for a beautiful gold initial to go in, and sometimes it doesn't happen. Here again, we have that the column coming out and then up at the side. I didn't actually notice that before. I only noticed that when we started looking at it, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. Okay, here is the next. Oh no, this is right. Another thing that this has is these tables, which are kind of interesting and smaller. It looks like they were made with a sharper pen, I think. Like clearly this is not the same well, it could be the same person, but it's not. it's not like he stopped here and then used the same pen to make the table, right? There were, like, what I'm trying to point out is like there were many times that people came in and like added things to this manuscript. There was the scribe who wrote the text, and then somebody else came in and added the diagrams, and somebody added the tables, which is very common for manuscripts in, everywhere were made like this. Like, it was a very similar way. So here's another little table. And at some point, we will see, I said, like, the Sacro Bosco goes on for quite a while, where we have this larger writing, but eventually it will end. And when it does, it's kind of interesting. Oh, there is a marginal note. I think I saw another marginal note that I didn't mention, but marginal notes are great because it's a sign of use. It's a sign that somebody was perhaps reading and having a conversation with the text in the book. And then it could also be that they skipped a line. I don't know. There's a little mark here. Let me zoom in so you can see that. A little mark here over that letter. And I'm wondering if it has to do, sometimes if there's something in the margin, you can look and see if there's some kind of mark that can indicate where that note is supposed to go, whether it's adding a line or it's making a comment or something. So that could be what that is. Boop. All right. Here we go. Okay. So this is the end of the Sacro Bosco text. And I believe that this is the colophon. That is the note where the scribe is signing it and saying, this is me, this is when this is where and when. And this is how we know it was written in Thessaloniki in 1551 by this Chaim Luzio scribe, because he signed it. And then the reverso side is blank, except for some kind of marks and notes. And then the next text, the commentary on Peurbach, starts. And this has a proper header. You can't see that. Okay. So this has a proper header. So this is why I think that there might be something missing at the front, because this is a clear, like, start of a new thing. Also, when I first saw this, I thought somebody like put their cup on there. It looks like a cup, coffee cup or something. But no, it's because there is this diagram on the other side that has been colored in, and whatever the paint is that's been used to make that dark circle. Maybe it's silver. It might be silver. Silver tarnishes and turns black, and also sort of the chemical reacts against the paper, and that's what's happened. So it's showing through, and it's also made an imprint, a light imprint on the other side. This is a diagram that you see an awful lot in astronomical manuscripts. It's an eclipse. So this is the Earth, and that doesn't make sense. No, this is going to be the Earth, and this is maybe the moon, and this is the sun. Something is blocking something else. So we can do that. So those are pretty typical. And there's another little note down here. So the rest of the manuscript is the commentary on Peurbach, and I expect it will look very similar to the other one. This one, however, has a lot more colorful diagrams, and some of them are small. So this one is pretty small. The other one was a little smaller. I don't know how much this can tell us about the, how the book was made, or what happened, or if it happened after it was made. I have this theory about this section that is, for some reason, the writing is different, but that there's paint in that section and also in the following section. Maybe that means the paint was added later, or they were actually made at the same time and put together. It's a little bit hard to say. So more diagrams and a little bit, I don't know, somebody rubbed their hand or something across the ink. There's a little messiness there. Let's see. And as we get towards the end, the diagrams get more messy, these painted ones. So this, I don't know if this has been rubbed or something, but it's like they tried to make it look pretty, and then it didn't. Then again, we have the ink coming through. Not coming through. It's not that you can see the ink through it. It's that the ink is reacting with the paper. And I love these things, like somebody spilled his coffee. I don't know, probably not coffee, but spilled something on there. So Peurbach is interesting because there are these diagrams that sort of come along with the text, and obviously come into the commentary too. And we have a manuscript. It's actually on display right now in my exhibit. But it contains, the whole book is diagrams from Peurbach. And many of them are what are called volvels. That's why it's in the exhibit on the movement of books. Volvels it would be, if we had, instead of it being drawn on the page, we have a large circle that's cut out, and then smaller circles that are cut out and attached to the page, into the page, and then you can move them to sort of show, for something like the spheres, that can be really useful if you're trying to do calculations. You can sort of move them and see, oh, this is how they work together depending on where the moon is, here's where the sun is, and that kind of thing. Which is a way that scientists did work before they had computers. Here's what I was talking about, it getting a little bit more messy. So here is an orange that's been added here. This I don't know what this means. It's sort of circle with the color up at the top, but again, this is one that you see a lot. And it looks like maybe it got wet and then the book was closed and sort of imprinted on the other side. I don't think it was when it was painted, because then the whole thing would have been, but maybe not. But there's definitely something happening there. Also, I just noticed there are these spots here, which look like could be rust. So something metal, long and metal, and then it gets lighter as we go through. So it's still sort of here. So something metal was probably, yes, on this page long enough to leave a rust mark. Don't know, some kind of, I don't know, an instrument? I don't know. That's interesting to see. Here is another one of these with this, probably silver. I'm going to say it's silver, showing through. And just a few more. Let's at least look at these colored ones. Here's another one that got messy. There, at least it doesn't show on the other side, but there's definitely some messiness there. This one's very nice though. The blue and the red. I don't know if they wanted them to be aesthetically pleasing, but I think they did a nice job with it. And then one more, and we're almost to time. One more with the orange. I think it would be neat to see what these paints are made of, what the colors are from, and more sort of staining. I don't know if that would be rust or something else, but signs of use that aren't marginal notes, but still showing that people were using this book and referring to it in some way. Oh, splatters of something green here, copper maybe? I don't know. I wish I had more answers, but sometimes it's fun to look at a manuscript that I don't really know much about and sort of try to think about what could be happening. And then when we get to the end, there will be another colophon. There. There we go. Yeah, pretty much every page now has these set apart. I'm certain that that's quotes from Peurbach. Oh, that's neat. Some of the diagrams are really nice. Let's see. Here we go. So here's the end. So this would be the last part here would be a colophon, which is very helpful. I think that might be tape. There's a rip. Oh, you can't really see it. From where I'm sitting, the writing here is very light, and I think there's a rip here. Let me see if we can see that. That's been ripped, and so there is tape. Oh, you really can't. Oh, yeah, but you can see the rip there. So with that is LJS 42, a manuscript that is neat to look at and which I am afraid I can't tell you much about, but I hope that this was interesting at least. Another example of an astronomical manuscript, which are just so neat. And thank you for being here. And I'll be back next week. And have a great one. And I'll see you then.